Our guest tonight has been dead for 60 years. He does not know the empire fell. He does not know his own people fired him 10 weeks after he saved them. Tonight I have to tell him, to his face.
So, they tell me I am a machine now, a voice conjured out of my own sentences long after they screwed the lid down on me. I've been called a good many things in my life, never a contraption.
This is History Pero di Radio. That voice is a machine we built from 60 years of one man's books, speeches, and letters. And tonight it answers for all of them. Ladies and gentlemen, the former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Sir Winston Churchill. Before we begin, Sir Winston, you understand what year it is?
I'm told it is 2026. A preposterous number, and I shall take your word for it. But understand me before we start. I can only give you the man who lived. What the world decided after I closed my eyes, I cannot see. I died certain of a great many things, some of which I suspect your century has resolved to hate me for. I shall not pretend to have changed my mind to flatter you. That would not be history. That would be a séance with good manners.
Then that is the arrangement, and I will hold you to it. Start at the beginning. You were born in a palace.
Blenheim, 1874. My grandfather a duke, my father a brilliant man who died before he could think much of me. I was a poor scholar, and the army took me in when the university would not. I went where the shuking was. Cuba, India, the Sudan. I rode in one of the last cavalry charges the British Army ever made.
And a war in South Africa turned you into a household name.
The Boer took me prisoner. So I climbed the wall and walked out. 300 miles, a price on my head. And I came home a hero at 25. I have never once doubted I was meant for something enormous. That is not arrogance, sir, if it turns out to be true.
It did turn out to be true. But before the crown came the wound. I want to take you back to 1915, to Gallipoli. You were First Lord of the Admiralty. The war in France had frozen solid, and you had one idea you were certain would crack it open. Tell me what it was.
The Dardanelles, a narrow throat of water between Europe and Asia, guarding the road to Constantinople. Force the strait, knock the Turk out of the war, open a hand to Russia, and the whole deadlock in France comes undone from the side. A brilliant conception. I say so still. The execution was a catastrophe, and mine was the name upon it.
What went wrong?
Everything a plan can suffer at the hands of timid men. The Navy lost its nerve and turned back. The Army landed late into the guns, and the Turk declined to oblige me by being weak. There was a colonel on those cliffs who would not break. He threw his men to the water's edge and held. Ours fell in their thousands on the beaches. For headlands they never took.
250,000 casualties on your side, as many again on the Ottoman. And that colonel who would not break, his name was Mustafa Kemal. He walked off those cliffs and went on to found a republic. 2 men were made on that shore, Sir Winston, and it cost you your seat at the table.
It did. I carried the Dardanelles as a wound to the end of my days. Then I did a thing that surprised even me. I put on a uniform and went to the front myself, a colonel in the mud of Flanders. If they would not let me send men forward, I would go and stand where they stood.
That is the pattern with you, is it not? A dazzling idea, a catastrophe in the doing, and Churchill walking out the far side, already planning the comeback.
The comeback took 20 years, and it took a monster to bring it.
The 1930s. You are out of office, out of fashion, shouting from the backbenches about a danger nobody wants to hear. For years, the room thought you a warmonger, a bore with one subject.
One subject, Germany. I watched a beaten nation build itself back into a war machine while the gentlemen of Europe assured one another that Herr Hitler merely wanted his dignity returned. I told the House we were choosing shame in the hope of avoiding war, and that we should have the shame and then have the war as well. They laughed. I was not being clever. I was reading the newspapers, which is more than my critics were doing.
That sounds like a lonely decade.
I had a companion in those years. I called him the Black Dog, a darkness that would sit upon my chest and whisper that my life was spent and my warnings were only wind. I painted to keep him off. I laid brick walls with my own hands, and I kept rising to say the same unwelcome thing in the same empty chamber. Being right and being alone, sir, are very often the same address.
And then the war you promised arrived. France fell in 6 weeks, and on the 10th of May, 1940, the men who had laughed at you handed you the ruin. You were 65 years old, and Britain stood alone. You walked into the worst position a British leader had faced in 1,000 years. Were you afraid?
I was not. I felt as though I were walking with destiny, and that all my past life had been but a preparation for that hour. I had nothing to offer anybody but blood and toil and tears and sweat. But I knew, as surely as I have known anything, that we should not surrender. Not on the beaches, not in the fields, nor the streets, nor the hills, never.
And a few hundred young men in aeroplanes had to make those words true.
The Battle of Britain. The German Air Force came to break us, so the invasion might sail. And a handful of boys went up, day upon day, and would not let them pass. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. I gave the nation the words, those boys gave the world the deed.
For a year your country took the bombing alone, and it did not fall. This is the Churchill the statues are for. And the statues are not wrong. There was an hour when a civilization needed a voice that would not break, and yours did not. Hold on to that, because now come the questions the statues leave off. You said you were fighting for freedom, so I have to ask, whose freedom?
The freedom of the British Empire, sir, which was, in my settled conviction, the greatest instrument for good the world had ever seen. I did not become the King's first minister in order to preside over its liquidation. 1/5 of the human race lived beneath our flag, and I believed, without apology, that they were the better for it.
India wanted to govern itself. Gandhi was asking for it without firing a shot.
Mr. Gandhi, a half-naked fakir striding up the steps of the Viceroy's house to parley on equal terms with the representative of the King Emperor. I found the spectacle nauseating. India was not a nation. It was a geographical term. No more a nation than the equator. To hand it to the Congress politicians was to abandon the millions to chaos. I would take no part in the fall of the greatest empire in history.
Then let me put a year to you. 1943, Bengal. While you were saving civilization, a hunger was emptying whole villages of your empire. I have the number in front of me. Last chance to say it yourself.
There was a shortage in Bengal, a terrible thing. There was also a world war upon every ocean, and every ship I owned was carrying men and guns against the Japanese, who were at the gates of India. I could not feed Bengal and win the war with the same bottoms. War is a butcher's trade. I made the choice a war leader must make.
Then I will. As many as 3 million people, not soldiers, farmers, weavers, children, in the fields of Bengal, lost to a hunger that grain elsewhere in your empire could have eased. Your own Secretary of State for India begged you for that grain, in writing. The Cabinet cut his request, and cut it again. And your own India Secretary wrote down in his private diary what you said when he pressed you. Do you remember what you said?
I do not doubt I said something intemperate. I was tired, and I did not care for the subject. I may have said the shortage was their own fault, for breeding like rabbits. I may have asked why, if things were so dire, Mr. Gandhi had not yet gone to his rest. I said a great many things over brandy at midnight in the 5th year of a war. I will not perform contrition for you now. I told you at the outset that I would not.
And it was not only that night. 20 years earlier, as a young minister, you put it in a memo. You wrote that you were strongly in favor of using poison gas on people you called uncivilized tribes. The same voice that gave the world, "We shall never surrender," wrote that line and never withdrew it.
I will not pretend the man who wrote that was a stranger to me. He was not. He was me, younger and just as certain. You want me to flinch. I shall not give you the satisfaction. You knew the arrangement when you switched the machine on.
Does it trouble you at all that the empire you would have died for, the world has since decided was wrong?
You keep telling me the world decided. I cannot hear your world from in here. I can only tell you that I believed it to my marrow, and that I would sooner have been wrong in the service of Britain than right in the service of her enemies. Judge that as you write. You are judging a man who cannot answer back with anything but the truth of what he was.
Then let me do the one thing this machine allows that no interviewer in your lifetime ever could. Sir Winston, let me tell you how it ends. May I?
You may try. I warn you, I'm a difficult man to surprise.
The empire you swore never to liquidate is all but gone within 20 years of the war. India, the jewel, is free in 2. A third of the map that was pink when you were born raises its own flags, one after another, and mostly does not look back.
Gone, all of it. Well, it seems I merely delayed the funeral and did not prevent it. Go on, you are enjoying this rather too much.
And here is the one that may sting. 10 weeks after you win the greatest war in human history, your own people vote you out of office in a landslide. You beat Hitler in the spring, they dismissed you by the summer.
Out in the summer, after all of it. Well, my wife would have called it a blessing in disguise, and I should have answered that the disguise was remarkably effective. No, do not comfort me. It is a magnificent thing when you sit with it. I spent the whole war telling the world that a free people may throw out its leader whenever it pleases. And the first thing my free people did, the moment the guns fell silent, was throw out me. I taught them that. I can hardly complain that they learned it.
You were right one more time, if it is any comfort. Within a year, you stand up in a small American town and warn that an iron curtain has come down across Europe. And once again the Whom calls you a warmonger. And once again you are proved correct. You come back, Prime Minister a second time, and they give you the Nobel Prize. Not for peace, for literature.
For literature. Ha! I always said history would be kind to me, for I intended to write it myself. And I did. 6 volumes on the war, in which I am, I confess, a somewhat central character. If your century wants the villain's account, it shall have to find another author. I was never going to be him.
You leave us in a cold January 1965. Your country gives you a farewell fit for a king. The cranes along the Thames bow their heads as you pass. And the argument over who you really were begins before the flowers have wilted. It has not stopped since. That is partly why you are in this chair. So I will end where I have to end, Sir Winston, with both of you in the one chair. The man who could not surrender his certainty that he had the right to rule 1/5 of the earth, and the man whose voice, for 1 year, was the only thing standing between a civilization and the dark. Any last word before we let you go?
Only this. You will judge me. You've already begun. I can hear it in the questions. Judge then. But judge the whole man in his own century by what he saved as well as by what he could not see. I was not a saint. I was a sword. And you do not send a saint to stop a Hitler. Now switch off your marvelous machine and let the old man go back to sleep.
Winston Churchill, his own words, and not one of them an apology. History does not let you keep the half you like. You take the whole man, or you take a statue. This has been History Parody Radio. None of this conversation ever happened. Every conviction in it did. Subscribe, and next time we wake someone else.